A leader has to take the risks. And this is just, you know, for me, this is kind of a dream come true because I've been following your stuff for many decades. And of course, you know my mentor, Hector.
Oh, yeah.
I think pretty well. And you guys play golf, or are you a golfer?
No, I'm not a golfer. No, we did some seminars together over the years and have known each other for a long time, you know, so he's a great guy.
No, he really is. And so anyways, he kind of turned me on to you a million years ago. And so that's kind of how we started following, but really cool to hang out with you. So, hey, thanks for coming on Wealth on the Beach podcast. Mr. Steve Siebold doesn't need much of an introduction. Most of everybody that's listening or watching right now, they know who you are. But of course, you're a professional athlete. We'll talk a little bit more about that. A national coach, 26 years studying the thought process, habits of the best top performers in the world. Wrote the best-selling book, 177 Mental Toughness Secrets of the World Class, which, by the way, is on my top 5 most favorite books of all time. And I've read hundreds and hundreds, if not over 1,000 books in my days. And so this is really cool to have you on, man. So what did you love about tennis, man?
Oh, always loved playing the game. Still love playing. You know, it's I play here now. I got a court on my property here, and I still play a lot and just love the game. It's a great game, you know.
Now, did you have, like, why were you passionate about it? Who got you started? I mean, was it your parents, or you just loved it from being a child, or how'd that start?
Yeah, my family, my brothers and my dad and mom all played. And so I started when I was 6 years old playing, and then started training to play tournaments when I was 7, and kept going till I was 22, and played on the Pro Tour for a couple of years and coached on the Pro Tour for a couple of years. And yeah, a lot of fun. Yeah, definitely.
And did you have any, looking back, did you have any rivals? Did you have any exciting matches? I mean, is there anything that pops in your mind of like that one match that you always remembered? Anybody you battled against?
Well, I got to play a lot of cool people, a lot of really famous players, you know, and especially mostly in exhibition matches like Bjorn Borg. After he won Wimbledon 5 times, I got to play him in an exhibition, and Rod Laver, and some of these players go way back, but they're, you know, some of the greatest players that ever lived. And the one that strikes me the most is Andre Agassi, because I saw him play. I never played him in a tournament because he was a little younger than me, but I saw him play when he was 18. I think I was 22, 23, whatever. And I thought, that's the best player I've ever seen in my life. That guy would embarrass me. So I think I'm done. And that's why I decided to retire. Then I started working on as a coach on the coaching team with him. And when he became, you know, #1 in the world. And so, yeah, I got a chance to play with a lot of really great players that are far better than I was, but you know, I really enjoyed it. It was great.
And so why do you think you became a good coach? I mean, what sort of attributes did you bring from that, being a professional athlete, into coaching? What sort of things do you think were important for you early on?
Well, you know, when you're coaching professional athletes, it really helps to have been one at some level or another. You don't have to quite be at their level, but it's such a small group of people that ever get to experience that it's a unique experience. And so you have to almost know that what they're going through at that level, because it's not just about, you're not teaching them the basics of, in this case, tennis. It's so much psychology. And that's why I got into the mental side of it, because at that level, so everyone is so great that the only difference really a lot of times comes down to the way they think. And that really comes with training. And you almost have had to go through some of those psychological battles to have them respect you enough to understand that you know what you're talking about. So
yeah, it's another level when you're coaching somebody that already knows what they're doing. So you're basically just trying to figure out where are you looking for their weaknesses? Are you looking for maybe some, you know, very small challenges that they might be having? I mean, what are you looking for when you meet somebody like an Agassi? How do you coach somebody like that? And what are you teaching them?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. I remember one time USA Today was doing a story on Andre, and they were down at the Ball Terry Academy where I was working with him. And they were interviewing the different coaches, and they came to me and said, what do you say to a player as great as Agassi? And I said, very little. And they thought it was a joke, but it really wasn't a joke. It was really, we'd watch him play for practice for 3-hour sessions, 3-hour blocks at a time. And, you would say almost nothing the entire time. And then say, then they'd come to you and he'd say, here's what I'm thinking, you're looking at this, you're moving the foot a little off here, it looks like, and you're moving the shoulder this way. You're looking for subtleties, tiny little things that might make a big difference. And because the big things just don't exist. They're just the problem at that level, especially with someone who was that gifted that could just do anything with a tennis racket. And he could have played professional baseball. Probably his son now is playing almost at that level. I think he's playing for USC now. And the hand-eye coordination at that level is freakish. I mean, it's absolutely so freakish. It's when people would say, he's really a great player. I'd say, no, he's not a great player. He's a freak of nature. He wasn't a great practicer. He wasn't that disciplined compared to some of the other players I worked with over the years, but he was a great talent.
You're just saying, I mean, so a lot of his ability was just, he was born with this eye-hand coordination that was, like you said, it was freakish. That's kind of what you're saying. I mean, it was just a crazy amount of natural born talent.
Yeah, I always give this example with tennis players, but it kind of makes the case. We were doing a 2-on-1 drill, so 2 players basically versus 1 on a tennis court. And the guy one time I was doing this with a couple times I did it with Agassi, and Tim Mayotte, who was a great player, who's top 10 in the world back then. He was serving about 135 miles an hour, which back then it's big now, but it was bigger then even. And Tim's was a real tall guy. He was a real tall guy, and he was serving. And so Andre and I were taking turns returning the serve and playing the point out and just switching every point. And I was just to return Tim Mayotte's serve. I was just basically at that level, and at least at my level and most people's level at the pro level, you're just trying to guess where he's going to hit the serve. And you're trying to get a racket on it, keep the ball low enough because he would come into the net, serve and volleyer back in those days. And just try to get a racket, keep it low. And that was it. Andre was taking an 8-foot backswing. We videotaped it. That's how I know it was 8 feet long. He was taking 8-foot backswing on a 135 mile an hour serve. And I turned to him one day and I said, I don't understand how you see the ball that early. And he said, you just got to watch the toss, Steve. You can see where he's going. I said, I know that. I've been playing for a long time. I get that's basic. I said, but you see it. You have to almost see it almost before he hits it. And he said, I don't know. I think it's in your head. And I said, no, it's in your hands. It's in your eyes. You can see it. It's almost like the great batters, they say, Daniel, in baseball, they can see where the ball's going before other people can. It was just freakish to see it up close because it was just freakish. That's the best way I could explain it.
That's fascinating. That's really fascinating.
Those guys are 1 in 10 million. I mean, it's crazy.
And so you end up, okay, so you're like, okay, I'm done coaching. I'm going the direction of, I'm going to start writing some books. I'm going to share my thoughts. I'm going to go into the psychology direction and try to figure out what makes these people so great. Is that kind of what you did? And why did you do that? I mean, what was your thinking back then?
Yeah, it wasn't as sophisticated as you made it sound. I wish it would have been that good. But the true story is I was working with professional tennis players. And then I started working on just the psychology part. So I switched to Olympic swimmers. The Olympic committee asked me to do that. And I worked with them and gymnasts and some other people. Then we started doing some work with the Boston Celtics and other groups, but all about the psychology and what I called the mental toughness part, which back then wasn't even hardly a term. It was so new. Now it's all over the place. But back then it was pretty new. I didn't coin it, but it was pretty new. And as far as a profession. And I had this little garage band we were playing one day at this someone's house. And a guy came up to me during the break. And he said, he goes, I know what you're doing. You're working with all these great athletes. I mean, these were Olympic champions. I had a lot of really good clients, but I wasn't making hardly any money. I was making like 40 grand a year. And I was working with some of the best athletes in the world, literally. And I had like a dozen of them. It wasn't like it was one person. And I wasn't hardly making any money. He says, I know what you do. I know your stuff. And he said, you ought to put that guitar down because no one's ever going to pay you to do that. He was right about that. And I'm a 3-chord player still. But he said, you ought to put that guitar down and pick up the microphone and go to companies and start telling them what you do. He goes, because I guarantee it, they don't understand it. And you do. And they'll probably pay you a lot more money than those athletes are paying you. And that was it. He walked away. And I thought, that's probably the best advice I've ever gotten. So that's what I did. That's what made it happen.
How old were you when that happened?
I guess I was about 30.
Okay.
Yeah.
30 years old. Fantastic. Yeah. And so, I mean, in this day and age, I mean, when we talk about mental toughness, I mean, I want to get your thoughts because, I mean, obviously the world has changed a lot in 30 years. And although somebody like me, I played sports, not at a professional level, but I played sports all my life. I've always been competitive. I've always been, I've always had some sort of, mental toughness. And of course, I resonate towards that word. I enjoy that, those words. I enjoy the toughness of what it takes to succeed at something that you love and that you desire. And so how do you feel about the changing of the world right now? Because it is getting a lot less mentally tough for sure, because people are weak. I mean, I was talking to somebody the other day. I mean, they're like, oh, matter of fact, I was talking to my daughter. She plays club soccer, and I was talking to the coach, and this guy's a stud. He's a well-known coach in that area. And he's like, it's hard to coach kids today because if you coach them too tough, the parents get pissed, the kids get pissed, their feelings get hurt, So I don't know. You know where I'm going with this. What's your thoughts about today's world?
I agree with you totally. And I think it's pretty predictable. And I'm not the first person to say this, obviously, but I think that, if you look back to like my parents, for example, were born during the Great Depression. So, their parents were very, very tough. They were from another country, like a lot of people in this country. And so they were very tough on my parents, and so they came up really tough, not as tough as their parents, but tough. And then we came up, during the, I really grew up in the 70s and, things were a lot easier, but a lot harder than they are now, I would say. So we had not as tough as our parents, but still tougher than the next generation. And then as it starts to get I think prosperity and success on the downside actually makes people weaker. That's the great thing about failure and struggle is that, it's not fun, but it makes you tough and it makes you strong just by default. You don't have a choice. I mean, it's not like you're going to the gym or not. You're in the middle of the struggle and you're going to get tough. It's just the way it works. And so I think what happens is prosperity makes, it just weakens people, generations as you go down. And all of a sudden now everybody's a snowflake. Everybody's offended at everything, that that's being said, but it'll have to turn because they're going to get wiped out. And when they get wiped out, then the next generation will be so tough and then it'll repeat. And that's what psychologists say. And it makes kind of sense if you think about it.
Do you think that, America's going that direction? I mean, are we, I don't know, man. I know this is crazy to talk about, but I just feel like America's getting beat by so many other countries, especially China. Obviously China is a big player. And I think that, sometimes I get nervous and about to think, this country, all civilizations don't last forever. There could be an ending of a civilization or a giant country to take over another country. Because of the downfall of prosperity and weakness and people becoming less mentally tough. I don't know. What's your thoughts?
No, I think, unfortunately, I think you're right. And I think a lot of people feel that way. And it's hard to imagine that, we're always told in school, I'm not sure if you heard this, but you probably did, coming up here in the States that, we're the greatest country in the world. Well, the truth is we're not, we are in some ways. We certainly are an exception in some ways, but in many ways, we're not even close to the greatest country, but they brainwash us, in school to say, oh, we're the greatest country. We are exceptional in some ways, but I've been traveling around the world for 25 years, giving speeches, and, you learn a lot just by traveling. You learn the truth versus what they teach you in school and what's in the media and all that, because you're there, you see the poverty, and then you see some really good things. The healthcare systems in some third world countries are better than our healthcare system. And, I don't know, not to get too political about it, but yeah, unfortunately, I think you have a point. I think we're on the decline. Look at the nonsense that, from a mental toughness, psychological standpoint, you got tens of millions of people right now that believe things that are patently completely untrue, that can be proven by evidence that they're not true. And millions of people still believe it. And that's just a lack of critical thinking. That's complete lack of critical thinking.
So what is a woman? What is a woman?
I saw that one. And again, not to get too political, but that Josh Hawley is not my favorite guy. I'm not a fan at all. But this time I've kind of got to understand where he's coming from. But I think for the first time I've ever said that about that guy. But Yeah. It's crazy out there.
It's a crazy world. And by the way, it's okay. I mean, we talk about everything here. I mean,
this is why we drink, Daniel. This is why we drink. This is the reason for alcohol.
Absolutely. Well, you know what? One day you'll come on over. We'll have a podcast one-on-one at the house while we're having drinks to really let it out.
We'll solve the whole thing in one shot. One night.
That's it, man. Rule the world, just like that, man. But no, really, I mean, I think that's an important thing that, again, maybe I want to kind of talk about this too, about being truthful, right? Because I think that is a part of mental toughness in my mind. Telling the truth. I understand there are things that, I mean, if the wife says, "Hey, do I look good in this dress?" Obviously there's exceptions to every rule, but as far as from a business standpoint, from a standpoint of being a good American or a good citizen of the world or whatever, like, shouldn't we tell the truth? And I think the truth is starting to wane in our society today, and more people are just, I mean, kind of what you were alluding to is that, some of this information is it scientifically can be proven. But why is it that our society today is so untruthful? The media in a lot of cases are so untruthful, when we know all we got to do is just Google something. We know the complete opposite of what they said. What is this? Is this a prosperity thing? What do you think?
I think that, that's a really good question. I wish I really knew the answer, because I really don't. But my best guess is, you can go through go way back from probably the beginning of human beings, and maybe even predecessors. So you're probably talking a couple 100,000 years, somewhere near there. And I think the emotional part of being a human being is part of it. I mean, look at, just for example, if you go way back, there are roughly speaking, about 4,500 gods that people believe in, none of which have a single bit of evidence to prove their validity. 4,500 gods. I mean, the craziest stuff in the world, but people need to believe in things. And I'm not saying they're true or not, but they're 4,500. People say you believe in God. Well, which one? There are 4,500 of them that have been made up for years. So which one? And so people will, I think emotional creatures, it doesn't mean they're stupid. They're gullible. They'll believe almost anything if you feed them enough stuff. I mean, since Donald Trump, for example, not to be political, but this isn't even political. So I go back with Trump to the 90s. I mean, he was a client of mine for 15 years. And, ever when he started running, the press started for president. I started getting calls from the Wall Street Journal, all kinds of publications, because I do a lot of media. And they know I've dealt with Trump for years. And, they kept asking, I'm still getting calls about Trump. He's not even president anymore since these hearings are going on with January 6th. And I got a call yesterday after the hearing from one big member of the press, and they're saying, "What about this? What about this?" I said, "If this is not political." I said this way back in 2012, I think, to the press. He's a perfect example of, he says it loud, he says it strong. He's a bully. I've known Trump personally. I've been to his house 25 times. I mean, I've known him for a long time. It's nothing. It's just what it is. He's a big bully. He's a liar. He always has been. It has nothing to do with politics. It has nothing to do with any of that. As a matter of fact, I like some of his politics. I know what he is and who he is, but he's just a strong, he says it long enough and strong enough, and millions of people believe it if you say it long enough and strong enough. Not just him. I mean, it's not just him, it's just in general. But I think that's one of the fallible things about human beings is, if you keep telling them something, even if it's a complete lie, they'll believe it and they'll fight for it, and some will die for it. And it's really, it's really embarrassing to me. I just don't get that. But
it is, because I do see that with the mainstream media too, on the flip side of right and left. I mean, it's like, you got to be kidding me. I mean, what are you doing? You just keep you mentioned running the same story. Yeah. Yeah.
Like on the other side of it, as you mentioned about the what's a woman? Well, it's okay, sure. So yeah, it's not just the right. Absolutely. It's the left as well. Yeah. I know.
Yeah. So but I think that as a society, man, I mean, what I love about your books, and what I love about, who you are, at least, in what I know about you, is the fact that you tell the truth, and you're a truth teller. And I think that truth has to do with mental toughness. Like, we have to be grown adults at some point to say, look, I mean, if I tell one of my agents, like, look, your numbers are down. You're not prospecting. You're, not doing the things you're supposed to do. Instead of the feelings getting hurt, shouldn't it be as a truthful human being? Shouldn't we? And again, we know that the person cares about you. I've spent time with you. I know you, we're friends. You've been to my house. I love you. I have recognized you in the past. But when it comes down to it, your feelings get hurt. You feel sad. You want to quit. You want to look somewhere, and it's just like, that's just human nature to not be truthful with ourselves. And so I think this is an important subject to talk about. Along the lines, I know you said this is not political many times, but I know you wrote a book called Sex, Politics, and Religion. So, I don't think, you probably didn't know I knew you wrote a book like that, but I do want your thoughts about politics and sex and religion, because we talk about everything. And I think that it is important to get the truth, at least to hear the truth, especially from people that we admire. You're somebody that a lot of us in the business world, in the entrepreneur world, that we do. And I don't think, by the way, that's publicized enough about you, Steve, maybe in your circles, but, I didn't hear too much about that book. And I think that it is important that it's out there, because somebody, like you, that believes in truth telling and being mentally tough, I think that needs to be taught, that your opinions are very important. So tell us why you wrote that book. Like, what, have you always been somebody that wanted to know about things like that?
Yeah, well, first of all, I appreciate the kind words. I really do. It's one of the reasons I always liked, we mentioned our mutual friend, Hector Lamarck. I've always really admired Hector and liked him because Hector's a very straight shooter. Art Williams is another one, very straight shooter. He's not going to lie to you. He's just going to give it to you straight, whether you like it or not. And I think there's some real, as you say, Daniel, there's some real value in that, because it's become something that's so rare, because because all of us are so afraid to offend each other that, I guess that's it. I'm not sure, but yeah, I decided I was going to write that book when I had enough money where no matter how many people did like me or hated the book or said, I'm going to burn your books, which people did after I wrote that book. I got a lot of criticism relative to people that read it. And a lot of the people that read my books did not read that book, because I don't think they really cared what I thought about that stuff. I'm not sure what it was, but I thought, this is the book I really want to write. And now financially, I'm okay. So I don't have to worry too much about the downfall of it, but the downside of it, when people get mad at me for writing it. But I wanted to base it on critical thinking, because that's really what I've always worked with companies, to your point, saying, okay, if you're going to make a statement, then back it up with evidence. And if you can, then great. And if you can't, then it's just faith, or it's a guess, or it's a wish, or it's a hypothetical, but it's not a fact unless it's got evidence to back it up, some kind of data, something. And I think, like to your point earlier, we're living, especially in America. I mean, I don't see it like this all over the world, at least traveling, before, all those years before COVID. A lot of countries are much more logic based than we are, especially Europe. I'm a big fan of Europe because I've worked there a lot, and they're a lot more logic based than we're very emotional in this country. Everything is, well, I'm going to tell you my truth, Daniel. Well, there's the truth, and then there's things that are not true. It's like, so it's not my truth or yours. It's just truth, and so I wanted to write that book just to say, okay, let's take 50 really controversial things, and I would study those things, which I did, and then try to back it up with some evidence. And I tried to arrive at a conclusion, not to say I was right about them, just to say, based on what I learned, here's my opinion, and threw it out there. And so I got a lot of feedback about that relative to how many people read the book, which was not that many people compared to the other books. But it was a lot of fun doing it, and at least having my say.
Yeah, I don't know why, but the first thing I thought about when you're starting to talk about is now if you're a little kid and you go to school and you identify as a cat, you can just meow all day.
Yeah.
And you don't even have to participate. You just meow, and you can't get in trouble, and nobody can discipline you for that, but you could just identify it. So again, it's a crazy world, man. And so guys like you though, Steve, I think more and more need to come out of the woodwork, because again, like, look, you know, one of the most freeing things is becoming financially independent. You know, I've been financially independent for a very, very long time. It's freeing to be able to say what you mean and mean what you say, because, you know, yeah, you might not like me, but I really don't give a shit. I mean, look, I want you to like me, and I'm trying to be I think I'm a good human being. But I tell the truth. And, you know, sometimes people can't handle the truth. Like what Tom Cruise said in the movie, whatever.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Him and
That's
Jack
right.
Nicholson, right?
Exactly.
So, and then you wrote another book, which we could dive a little bit into that. Die Fat or Get Tough. You know, get mentally tough, right? Die fat
Right.
or get mentally. So tell us about that book and why you wrote that book.
Yeah, that book really turned a lot of people up. The second TV show, I do a lot of television, about 100 shows a year, and lifestyle kind of shows like morning TV, that kind of thing. So the second show I went on was the Today Show. This is about 10 years ago, or maybe longer. It's probably longer now, with Kathy Lee Gifford, when that show was the #1 show in the morning. And I did a 5-minute segment on the Today Show, like literally a week after the book came out, and I had 3 death threats on that show. NBC wouldn't let me out of the studio because they thought someone was on the street trying to shoot me, because that's what they threatened. And then I went to Good Morning America. I got more death threats. And I went, anyway, I traveled over the world for media on that book, back when we had to actually go to Europe to do media in Europe. Now we do it on Zoom, but like this, and Australia. And I went all over the world, and or not all over the world, but I went to about 8 or 10 countries to promote the book. And because it was starting to get hot, and people were just pissed. I mean, the BBC in London usually is pretty tame, and they were worried I was going to get shot just because I was saying, look, if you're fat, it's nope, don't worry about it. It's like, we've all probably eaten too much. I know I have. It's easy to gain weight, but don't think it's not your fault. Of course, if I gain weight, which I have, it's your fault. I mean, if I'm eating pizza, I can't expect to be, not to get fat at some level or gain weight or whatever. So just take responsibility for it. That's it. And then here's some mental toughness techniques to help you, overcome it if it's a goal in your life. And if it's not, then it's not. That's all I said was, if it's fat, it's your fault. If you want to fix it, grow up emotionally, get tough and fix it. If not, don't worry about it. And people went berserk. I mean, people were burning my books, literally sending me videos, Daniel, literally, you can't, and my books in the trash, and say, I will never read your books again. I'm burning your books. I'm like, geez, relax, put the Doritos down, put my books back up.
Yeah. They're burning your book as they're eating Doritos, drinking a full liter of Coca-Cola, right? And
it's wild. Yeah, people don't want to take responsibility. It's the food companies, it's the government, it's everybody else except. And I wasn't like trying to be holier than thou. I'm saying, look, I've gained weight too. So I get it. I'm just saying, I know I'm responsible for it. It's no one else's fault but mine. If I don't care, if I can accept it, that's fine. If I want to fix it, then I got to look in the mirror. That's all I said in the book. And people went berserk. I mean, I've never had that many threats against my life and for any other book, including the Sex, Politics, Religion book, which was much more controversial,
One of my favorite documentaries is Fat, Sick, and Nearly Dead, right? You probably heard of Joe.
I've heard of
Joe
it. I've
the
never
Juicer.
seen it.
Oh my God, you got to watch it. It's great.
Yeah.
It's a life. I've recommended this documentary to so many people. It's unbelievable. Because look, the guy had all kinds of problems. He had all kinds of issues. Matter of fact, I mentioned it in my latest book, Wealth on the Beach. And I mentioned this story in there. This guy had so many problems. He had high blood pressure, he's autoimmune disease, extremely overweight. I think he had some skin, issues and stuff like that. And he's going to die eventually, right? I mean,
Right.
Your body is killing itself because of the way you eat and the way you drink and the way you take care of your body. And so the guy did a 60-day or 90-day or 30-day, something like that. Not fast, but he only drank green drinks. So he juiced green drinks, and that morning, noon, and night. That's it. I mean, just total discipline. I mean, think about the discipline to do something like that. Even for 30 days, that's crazy to do, right?
Yeah.
No pizza, no bread, no nothing, just green drinks. He freaking changed his entire body. Like, seriously, you follow this guy because his name's Joe the Juicer on, I think it's on Instagram. But the bottom line is that your book is just a truth-telling book that if you don't do something, you're going to kill yourself. If you don't change something, right? Whether it be business, whether it be your body, whether it be anything, right? You're being an athlete, whatever it is. If you don't change something, you're going to continue to go down the road that maybe is not your favorite road, right? So,
right.
Looking at, you interviewed, I don't know, hundreds and hundreds of people, right? When you wrote 177 Mental Toughness Secrets, is that right?
Yeah, I had interviewed,
was I reading that
how
right?
many then, maybe 1,000 people then. I'm
Wow.
up to self-made,
Wow.
all self-made
Wow.
millionaires. I'm up to like
Wow.
1,327 or so. I'm still doing it.
Wow.
Like 13, but these are all live one-on-one interviews, none on the phone, none Zoom, just all one-on-one.
Love that. And so do you have a favorite one, or do you have somebody that really kind of helped to shape, because you've been doing this for so long, so anybody that helped to shape you a little bit or kind of give you, really get you to think deeper?
Yeah, I started in 1984 when I was in college doing this, and I've been doing it ever since. And I wrote a book actually about it called How Rich People Think. That was based mostly on the interviews. I think I was up over 1,000 then. I forget where I was in 177. That was much earlier, but yeah, they all did, Daniel. I mean, they all did. Because they all have, different philosophies and whatnot. But I think part of a lot of what really helped me was, was the concept of putting things into living your life through kind of what we talked about, the eyes of objective reality, looking at things the way they are, as opposed to the way you wish they were. And then approaching your business, approaching your life in some semblance of reality, as opposed to this fantasy world that, it's easy to get caught up in as an emotional creature, and to believe all these things that have just no evidence and, that they exist or they're true or anything like that. I think that really is a good, especially for entrepreneurs, that probably you have a lot of those people on your fan base, like I do, where they're building a business, they have a sort of that mentality like we do. And, they've got to start where they really are, as opposed to where they wish they were. I think that's probably one of the biggest things I learned over the years.
And so when you talk to entrepreneurs or salespeople, what are some of because again, you've trained a lot of salespeople through the years. What are some of the mistakes besides living in a fantasy world, thinking we're going to make sales without prospecting and all that stuff like that? Any other things that you think that salespeople or entrepreneurs, like mistakes that they're making that you kind of have solved through the years? Anything that comes to mind?
Oh yeah, no. The number one thing I saw over 23 years of doing mostly turnarounds for big companies like Johnson & Johnson and GlaxoSmithKline and Microsoft. We do turnarounds with low performing sales teams. So we'd have to raise sale. We go and they'd bring us in, and we'd have to raise sales by, say, in a region for a big company, maybe $500 million would have to go to $600 million for that region of the company. And then they'd send us to another region. And the first thing we do is we'd survey the people and find out how close to reality they were in their thinking about their own performance, the number of calls they made in the day, their mentality, just about everything you can think of. We sort of dissected their psychology pretty simply. It wasn't rocket science, but we got really good at it after a few years. And we found out that most people that are underperforming, or even at the mid-level of performance, whether it be a team or a sports team, a business team, or an individual, are delusional. In terms of delusional in the context of how good they are at what they do, how hard they're working, the effort they're putting in, the focus they have, just about every metric you can think about that's a psychological metric, they're completely delusional in. I mean, they'll tell you they're working hard and they're working 2 hours a day. They might be showing up 8 hours a day or 10 hours, but they're working too. And they really believe it. They're literally just delusional thinkers. And I've literally had teams that were ranked 23 out of 24 in the country. A lot of the companies ranked by regions. A lot of them have like between 20 and 25 regions in a country, a giant multinational company or multi-billion-dollar company. And teams that were 23, 24 in the country would stand up, 200 salespeople would say, well, we're 23, but we're not 24. So we're not the worst in the company. So we're not that bad. You're thinking, are you out of your mind? You're 20, you're about to get fired. All these people would almost be on the verge of getting fired. And we would talk to them and say, why do you think the company wants to eliminate, you out of this position and replace you? I have absolutely no idea. I'm a very good salesperson. Their numbers are horrible. And you're going, this is not a stupid person. And it's not, it's a delusional person.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting because I can see that we have 1,500 licensed agents and we have 50 locations, and it's wild to see how many people that they just keep showing up, and nothing ever changes. Now in my business, as you know, you can't fire people. If people don't get fired, they just quit or they leave or whatever. But I think it breaks my heart sometimes to see some of these people. They think they're working hard. They think they're putting in the effort, but I mean, really, are they? I mean, because I don't know if I decide one day that I'm just going back to work and I'm going to go kill it and go build another 50 locations. I mean, I know that it's going to be a tremendous amount of work. I mean, I won't see my family for a couple of years. You know what I mean? I mean, it's going to be all in, everything I got, trying to go build something. And I don't think people realize that there is a period of time that you're going to be unbalanced. You're going to be, I don't know. Do you agree with that? I mean, there's going to be a time where you're all in.
Oh yeah, no, you're totally right. Especially when you're talking about, building a business, as you and I have both done for a long time. I think you have to realize, what you want and what you don't want. And if you want to go to the next level, whatever that looks like, are you willing to, as you said, leave your family for a couple of years? Because that's probably, psychologically, at least, and time wise, you're putting time, what it took to build the first time. So obviously you're more efficient, you're smarter, you're older and all that, but you still know you're on the ground. I mean, the entrepreneur world is, I always say, top career people are boxers. Entrepreneurs are street fighters. I mean, we're out there on the show. We're the little guy. We're not Johnson & Johnson. We don't have all this credibility. We're nobody, basically. We're this little company with this little business, and we may make a lot more money than some of the career people do, but we're kind of unknown to the world for the most part. And so we're street fighters. We're out there fighting the fight. So it's tough. And I remember, I first started getting, relatively successful. Talking to the press, people would say, well, are you going to be the next billionaire? All these billionaires, you've interviewed all that. Billionaire was the big thing back then, 15 years ago, 20 years ago. Well, you've dealt with all these billionaires, you've got Wall Street Journal used to say, more billionaires than we do. You talk to more billionaires than we do. Just because I did it for so long, are you the next billionaire? And I said, absolutely 100% no. Because I know 300 or 400 of them and I know the way they live and I don't want to live like that. I mean, in terms of, they are 24/7 and God bless them. I mean, they're great people and they love doing it. I know what I need and what I want, and I'm good. And I don't need a yacht in the Mediterranean. If you want one, or anyone wants one, great, no sweat. But I know what it takes because I've watched them do it, and it's just not for me. It could be for someone else. But so I mean, I hopefully I'm not deluding myself into thinking I want something I'm not really willing to put the effort in to do, because I'm not for that.
I love that you said that. I love that you said that because my goal, I wanted to retire at 30. Now, obviously I continue to work and I do a lot of things in my life, but I haven't had to work since I was 28. I mean, technically since I was 28, but to me, it was that financial independence. I just wanted freedom, man. I didn't care about being a billionaire. I'm so glad you said that because I didn't go out and buy 3 Ferraris. I didn't go out and buy the biggest house in the neighborhood. I didn't go crazy. But it was financial independence to me was the freedom, man. I want to get up and do what I want to do whenever I want to do it. And if I want to work hard, I'll work hard. If I don't want to work hard, I don't have to work hard. I want to work because I want to work, because I enjoy what I'm doing. Because, I just, everything that I do today, it's cool because you do have those options. And I'm glad you said that because people ask me all the time, do you want to be a billionaire? Or they'll tell me, I want to be a billionaire. I said, man, that's great. If you want to be a billionaire, go for it, man. I'm sure it's going to be great. But there's no way. I don't want to work that hard. There's no way. People ask me all the time, do you want to go do this or do that? I don't want to work that hard, man. Freedom is pretty amazing. But I'm sure who my mentor is now for sure, right? Because Hector. So that's kind of who I learned it from. It was always, let's get free, man. And then we get to do what we want to do, So this is cool, man. You know what, Steve, I really appreciate hanging out with you. I have one other question because I'm always curious about the childhood, like you as a small boy, what did your parents do? What kind of financial were you a part of? Like, what did your parents, did they make a lot of money? Did they not make a lot of money? Where were you at as a child?
We were just probably a little above the middle class. You know, we never really, we never worried about money as kids or anything. Of course, kids, you don't really think about money much, you know, but I sort of had a different, a little bit different background than most people in the middle class, because I was on the national junior tennis circuit with a bunch of rich kids. So I saw the other side up close. It wasn't on TV. You know, I saw it up close. I saw them have tennis courts in their backyards and big pools and, you know, all the rich trappings of wealthy people. So I saw that as a little kid. And that's why I got interested in interviewing millionaires, because I thought, what are they doing that we're not doing? I mean, it looked like they pull up in a tournament, the kid's 10 years old, and he pulls up in a limousine. I'm like, what? You know, I'm staying at the Motel 6 with my mom, because the Motel 6 didn't have a Red Roof Inn back then, didn't have TV service. So you could get it for $12 a night, you know? So we weren't poor, but, you know, seeing the dichotomy between sort of the middle class, like, or maybe a little above middle class that we were, and then these really rich kids, I thought that looks pretty cool. I mean, I like that. And then I learned, to your point, I learned that it wasn't the money I wanted and the stuff that they had so much. I mean, it's fine, but, you know, it was the freedom, to your point. It was just doing what I want, when I want, with whom I want, for as long as I want, without having to answer to anyone else. That's today. That's a long time ago. And that's, to me, that's still the turn on every day. I just want to control my life, and I don't want anyone to control me. And, you know, you buy stuff, whatever, and that's all great. But, you know, 2 days later, you're like, yeah, it's a car. Yeah, it's a house. Yeah, it's a whatever, fill in the blank. And it's a better watch than the old one I had, but the Timex that cost $20 takes the same, you know, it keeps the same time. The freedom is different though. That never, to me, that never gets old. So I think that seeing those wealthy kids and then thinking, man, if I could get at least enough money to control my life, that really spurred me. And to want to do what you did. I wanted to be a millionaire and retire when I was 30, and I didn't make it till I was 31. I retired for 3 months. That drove me out of my mind. And that, because I couldn't retire because everyone's at work. There's no one to play with. You know, you're like, call your buddies. What are you doing? I'm at work. What do you think I'm doing? You know, I'm like, he's like, what are you doing? I'm at my penthouse looking at the water. I'm like, yeah, great, rich guy. You know, fantastic. I got to go back to work. I may get fired. So I went back to work and started working. But to your point, the freedom is, I think that's the golden goose, man.
Yeah, no, I feel the same way sometimes, because I'm 47, and, you know, sometimes, you know, you're like, hey, you want to go play golf? Nah, I got to work. I got to do this. It's funny because a lot of my very good friends, they just happen to be around, you know, in their like early 60s, you know, so a lot of my, you know, friends, they sort of, I've kind of gravitated towards people that have a lot more time and a lot more freedom to do the things that they want to do. So it's cool. It's cool that we have so much in common. But look, man, Steve, can't tell you enough how much I appreciate your time and your effort today. This was so much fun. I think I could do another 2 hours with you, but I don't want to do that to you. I really respect your time. And look, man, I want everybody, though, to make sure that's listening, that's watching. I want them to reach out to you, Steve. They're just going to say hello. They're going to catch you on social media somewhere, on Instagram or Facebook. They're going to go buy all of your books, which, you know, I'm going to go back and reread the Sex, Politics, and Religion again. And I haven't read the fat one. So I'm going to definitely read the fat one, because I love that stuff, man. And I agree so much with it. But everybody, go out, man, and get a different perspective. Listen to something new. Listen to a new way of thinking. Don't think that you know it all. Like that's the death, man. Ego will keep you broke, man. Open your mind and believe, you know, and start to believe other people that have good, solid, you know, a good, solid mentality and a good grasp on the world. And I'll tell you, your life will change. So, Steve, how do we get a hold of you, man? Where do we find you?
Yeah, like you said, social media, Google's easy. We have a new podcast for mental toughness, people like mental toughness, called mentaltoughnesspodcast.org. I couldn't get .com. So .org. So if you want to check out the new Mental Toughness podcast, we've had that for about 3 months. It's kind of fun. So I have a blog, Mental Toughness blog, and there's lots of stuff out there. But yeah, the books are on Amazon. All the books are on Amazon too. So
good stuff, Steve. Thank you so much. And everybody, make sure you continue to get after it, man. I mean, just continue to dream bigger, get after it, but most importantly, do it now. God bless you. We will see you at the top.